Joe Grogan, Assistant to the President, Director of the Domestic Policy Council. Director Grogan, great to have you with us again, sir.
Happy to be on. Thanks for having me.
All right, Joe, another whirlwind day, right? Stock
Sure.
market's going to go down again. Futures are already down. The Nikkei in Japan down 5%. Meltdown globally. President's speech yesterday. Where are we now, Joe?
Well, I think you saw the president take bold action last night after consulting with the top medical experts in the world, frankly. The picture of where the epidemic is came into focus. We didn't have adequate data before this to inform the decision, but in the past 48 hours, our top experts have gathered enough data to understand where they think this virus is headed, its characteristics, and what the president would need to do in order to get it under control. There were extensive decisions throughout the day, and the president made a very difficult decision for the benefit of the health of the American people to save American lives, and hopefully, take some short-term pain, so then we can come shooting out of this, get our economy back humming, and get the American people back to work and back to their normal lives.
Are we looking at a global meltdown, Joe?
Well, I'm not going to say, no, we're not looking at a global meltdown. There is going to be some tough days and maybe some tough weeks ahead in certain parts of the world. Italy is having an extremely difficult time right now. A lot of their health workers in certain areas are overwhelmed, and they've got shortages of some of the things they need to respond. There are going to be parts in the United States where you're going to have challenges, but what the president's trying to achieve here is that we don't have a challenge across the country in every city all at once. If we can keep this epidemic contained to certain areas and depress the intensity of it, we'll be fine. But the challenge is going to be if you have a medical system somewhere in the country that gets exhausted, its healthcare workers start to get sick and can't support people in vulnerable positions. That's when that's when you could have problems like they're having in Italy, like they had in China. The virus itself, for somebody like me, I'm younger than 50. I don't smoke. I don't have lung problems. I don't have heart problems. I should be fine. I might get sick, like I've got a bad cold. But and my kids may not, if they were to get it. I've got 4 kids. They might not even show symptoms. They might not even know. I might think I just have seasonal allergies and just go on about my day. But the danger is for people who are seniors or have underlying health conditions. Those people are most at risk, and we have to make sure that we don't have a situation where those populations, when they get vulnerable to the virus, that they don't overwhelm the health system. So that's what we're trying to achieve. That's what the president, based upon the recommendations, that's why he took this dramatic action last night after a lot of consultation throughout the day.
We're with Joe Grogan. He's assistant to the president and director of Domestic Policy Council live in the White House. So, Joe, I thought his speech last night was spot on. I mean, I saw it and I went to bed and I'm like, okay, I really understood what he was trying to do. Just one thing clear up, there was some confusion that he was banning trade from Europe when he said cargo, but that's not accurate, right?
That is not accurate. It's important to remember we still have cargo and have had cargo going back and forth with China throughout all this.
Right.
We were mirroring what we did with China. He was referring to the exceptions, that there would be exceptions to travel, including cargo, but there would be others, for instance, that we're still working through, principally to allow Americans to come back. There could be some other exceptions that we work through over the next 48 hours. Chad Wolf over at the Department of Homeland Security, he issued a statement right as the president was speaking that he is working with his team to have the specifics worked out in the next 48 hours. But the president felt it was important to make this announcement yesterday to allow people to prepare and, cancel trips if they were headed to Europe and, interrupt the transmission of the virus, the transport of the virus between, from Europe to the United States.
Joe, also, there was a meeting yesterday at the White House with all the major banking executives coming to the White House to meet with the president. I read the transcript of that twice that was put out by the press pool in the White House at the end of the day. Every single major banker, and that's every single one from Bank of America on down, said there is no financial crisis like there was in 2008, that banks have great liquidity, their asset balance sheets are in fabulous shape, so it's not a 2008 thing. But yet that didn't seem today to get heated because we're now looking at another major Dow Jones sell-off. Where's the disconnect here, Joe Grogan?
Well, I'd say one thing, what you see is the president really taking leadership by bringing in the industry proactively, not just the banks, but he brought in, pharmaceutical companies, brought in insurance companies, brought in hospitals to come and sit them down and say, what do you need? What can we do to help? Mm-hmm. What are the problems? And also challenge them to step up. He had the banks in the same spirit of collaboration. This has got to be all of America working together to get through this. And he wanted to have a very frank discussion with them about what they might need and how they might be able to help. Look, I'm not going to tell you I can predict what the stock market's going to do on any given day. Like I said in the beginning, we are going to have some tough days and maybe some tough weeks. But if we take our medicine now, we can come roaring out of this. I do think the doctors have made it clear that if this behaves, and you've heard the president say this, if this coronavirus, COVID-19, behaves the way other coronaviruses behave, MERS, SARS, that as spring arrives, that there will be seasonality and seasonal relief from the spread of this virus, and we'll be coming out of this in a few weeks. But it was important that we not seed new clusters of the virus, throughout the United States by continuing to have European travel. And, you're seeing what's happening in Italy right now, but it's spreading throughout the rest of Europe. And what we're worried about is where the disease is going in Europe. There's so much travel back and forth that we just couldn't allow the disease right now to continue to be imported into the United States. If it was July and we had, and the theory that it's seasonal bears out, and it would have just burned out if it had just started spreading, say now, and we were having this discussion in July, maybe we wouldn't have done it because it wouldn't be that bad. But we felt like we had to move now. The president felt like he had to move now after getting advice from, it's important to realize, he got advice from the top medical professionals, as well as his cabinet on this, laying out the science, laying out the public health case, laying out their understanding of how this virus works. And he made a very difficult decision, asked a lot of serious questions, detailed questions about the data, about the effects, and he made a tough call. I mean, this isn't something that he's happy to do. This is one of the burdens of being leader of the free world in the United States. It's not an easy job. He made a very tough call, but he felt like he had to for the health of the American people.
We're with Joe Grogan. He is live at the White House. He's assistant to the president, director of President Trump's Domestic Policy Council. Director Grogan, I want to get to China for a second. President Xi traveling to the Hunan province the other day, that was been on lockdown. I mean, that's so big there. It's like 5 Pittsburghs all in one. And it seems that the virus is now getting under control in China. What have you heard about that?
Well, it's always been difficult to figure out exactly what's going on in China because they have a less transparency with their data.
That's an understatement.
Yes, and this is a key point why we just now felt confident in the scientific judgment, because we had data out of countries that are transparent.
Mm-hmm.
South Korea, Italy, some of the other countries to say this is how this virus behaves, this is how it attacks people, this is who's vulnerable, this is who's not vulnerable, this is how it expands once it gets into a population and is detected. This would have been premature 6 weeks ago because
Right.
you just would have been throwing a dart at a board. You could be right or wrong, overreacting could make things worse. It would have been, it wasn't justified. You have to be data driven. When we got the data, when the scientists got the data, when they built the models and consulted with the best scientists all over the world, they felt like they were in a position to make a strong judgment to the president. And once they got the data and analyzed it, they didn't hesitate. They made this recommendation to the president. So I do think, I know there's some on the left-wing media have been criticizing some other members of the administration for talking about the opacity of the Chinese system in delaying the response, saying we were blaming China. Look, that is a fact. The Chinese are not transparent in the release of their data. They were not transparent. They did not give us data, and it slowed the public health response. It cannot be denied that they did that. That being said, what is going on in Wuhan, we'll see. Hopefully, we all hope and pray that they are through the worst of it. The data seems to be showing that. We hope that it doesn't come back as they release some of their restrictions. But what's the data showing in Europe is it's expanding rapidly, not just in Italy, but throughout Europe. And that's why we took the actions that we took.
No, look, it makes sense. And just finishing on China a second, I mean, it's not only their lack of transparency, which is a fact and true, but then, there's the believability factor, right? Half the stuff that comes out of there you can't believe. It's all made up. I mean, that's a fact also. I mean, they have a state-controlled media, and they put journalists in prison if they criticize something. So that's their system. And now that, as you say, we have better facts and figures. I know we're running on time. You've got a lot to do today, Joe. I really appreciate your time. Yesterday, Nancy Pelosi coming out last night with a package, billions and billions of dollars. We don't even know how much it's going to be, but she's working on something that has to do with time off, stimulus, etc., with which the president, if it passes, would be able to administer. Are we negotiating with them, with the Democrats and Pelosi? Give us your view on that.
Yes,
package.
We've been talking to them. Yeah, we've been talking to them about a package to help the American people. We've given them our asks, our suggestions on how this should go. They are coming back, as they normally do, with at least with this president, because they've achieved so little, they're coming back with policy asks that would set terrible precedents, not help us on the in fighting the virus, and not be bipartisan. So we're pushing back on that. We're going to be in a negotiation with them, and hopefully we can put partisanship aside, get together, and get a robust package for the American people and get through this. It is not the preference of the President of the United States to be partisan about this. As you saw in the speech last night, he called for bipartisanship. It's our hope that the Democrats will bring this to conclusion quickly. We have to do it this week because they're going to be out on recess next week. And, we can't really wait that long, especially because there's the possibility that they might be on extended recess. There were reports of a staffer who got the coronavirus and one of the offices shut down yesterday. So they've got to move this week. I hope we can set partisanship aside, get to consensus, and get this on the president's desk in the next couple of days.
Joe, do you think that Schumer's and Pelosi's response after the president's speech yesterday was an indication of bipartisanship?
I'm going to be honest with you. I didn't even see it because I was doing real work, and I wasn't really all.
Joe,
interested.
it was so partisan. I mean, I opened my show with that today. I just couldn't believe it. I mean, the president just gets done with a speech. Everybody's concerned about this. Markets are in the middle of a meltdown. Everybody knew overnight what was going on in the bond market. We knew that the Japan Nike was down 5 or 6%. All this was going on, and they get on TV last night and they blast the president and weaponize it. It's just, I tell you, Joe, I never thought I would see a time in the country like we're having now. All I wanted them to do last night was say, we are going to come up with a package to help the American people, just like Joe, just like you just said. We're going to work with the president tomorrow to try to make this work for everybody, to figure it out. Thanks for being with us. We're all going to get through this together. Instead, they immediately weaponize it. And Schumer says the president doesn't have enough testing out there. Therefore, it's his fault that we're in this position. I mean, it was unbelievable. To the life of me, I don't know when we're going to get to the a place in this country with this president where the opposition can simply work together to get something done. It's incredible, Joe.
Yeah, it is unfortunate. I mean, it's an opportunity right now to put comments like that aside and roll our sleeves up and work together. I think the president is there. He has been there for a long time. He's wanted to work with them on. I mean, this week I had an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal about working together on bipartisan drug pricing legislation. We agree on about 80% of a drug pricing package, maybe 90% on a drug pricing package that would get real relief to the American people, especially America's seniors. There's a few provisions that are really would do a terrible disservice to American innovation and not help Americans get the therapies they need to fight things like coronavirus. And we had the pharmaceutical companies in a couple weeks ago. They're all working together on vaccines and therapies and hustling to try and get these treatments out to fight the virus. Everybody around the table is an American company with the exception of one, and that's because we reward innovation in this country. Yes, there are seniors pay too much for drugs. We can do something about that. Yes, drug prices are too high. We can do something about that. But we cannot destroy this industry. Otherwise, we won't be able to confront public health challenges like this. And if we work on a bipartisan basis and not just set up an opportunity for messaging and something to campaign on in November, then the American people are the big winner. That's where the president is on all of this stuff. He is not a hyperpartisan. He has extended his hand over and over and over to the Democrats, and unfortunately, they have chosen to rhetoric like you talked about last night, and they've chosen to pursue policies that can't get on the president's desk. So it's unfortunate, but I'm hopeful that they will calm down and we can work together.
Joe Grogan, I want to thank you for being with us, Joe. You are the White House voice of reason, assistant to the president, director of the Domestic Policy Council. Joe, thank you for being with us, sir.